Hey, it's Adam, and before I even tell you what this video is going to be about, even though you probably already know because you read the title, I just want to make the disclaimer that this video is going to require a lot of open-mindedness, because the number one reason why the secrets of the universe remain hidden is because of closed-mindedness. So the secrets to the universe, meaning the big questions of life, like what reality is, where existence came from, what happens after we die, is life a dream? What am I? What do I actually exist of? What is consciousness? What is awareness? These really, really deep philosophical questions we assume have no answers. And these questions we assume are almost a waste of time to even talk about or think about. But what if I told you that these questions actually do have answers, and it's possible for you in your life to actually discover what reality is, or if life is a dream? And the answers to these questions are actually tangibly, practically useful for you in your life. Answering these questions will give you a lot more happiness in your life, will give you a lot more results, positive results in your business, in your relationships. Because believe it or not, knowing the substance of reality is actually a useful thing for you to know as a human being. And the problem is that we assume that these answers can't be answered, or that we don't know the answers to these questions, but maybe 1,000 years in the future, science will eventually discover what caused the universe to exist. But right now, we just can't know, so there's no reason of even bothering to think about it. Now, what if I told you that humans have actually known the answers to life's biggest questions for thousands of years? We've already known the answers. But the main problem is getting you to be open-minded enough to actually listen to what the answers are, and to even entertain the possibility that these questions can even be answered. That is the main problem. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the mechanics of how and why these really deep questions, which we already have the answers to, how they remain hidden from you and also from the rest of society. Now we're going to be talking about the actual mechanics of ignorance. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most important topics for all of humanity to understand. We've been trying to teach the masses about ignorance for thousands of years, but this is just such an inherently interesting topic because I'm going to be shining light on a lot of hidden, sneaky things that you're not aware that your mind is doing, that is keeping you trapped in a rut of mediocrity and cravings and overall dissatisfaction with your life. So the reason why the most advanced teachings remain hidden is because advanced teachings are by nature existentially threatening to you. Meaning that if I come and I tell you about what reality is, or I tell you about if life is a dream or not, the answers to these questions are so radical and so outside of the common paradigm and the mainstream worldview that for you to actually be open-minded to listening to these radical questions and radical answers, it's actually going to cause you emotional discomfort and emotional trauma for you to actually be open-minded to listening to these things. If you are to grasp these existential answers really deeply, and you actually grasp them in your direct experience, and you listen to what it means and the ramifications for what that means for your entire life and all of existence, if you actually listen, it's going to feel like someone is holding a gun to your head. It's actually going to feel like you're dying. And the reason for this is we have to understand what you are. What is the ego? So the ego, like literally you, like hello, like hi, like whoever you think I'm talking to right now, this sense of self that you have, what you think you are, that's the ego. And now is where some of the advanced teachings are going to come in, which requires some open-mindedness. It's very simple to understand, but your mind is going to play all sorts of tricks, which I'm going to get into later in this video, that's going to cause you to stay closed-minded to what I'm about to say. So the ego, what you think you are, hello, this thing is not a physical entity in the sense that you think you're a physical body that actually exists in a physical world, but really you exist as a conceptual story. What you are existentially is actually a story, a collection of thoughts, a collection of ideas and subtle worldviews that all congeal together and create what you call you, with your sense of self. Now, this is very important. This is super key. Your actual sense of self, what you think you are, is an idea, a conceptual construction. And what I'm claiming is that if you were to completely reboot your mind and completely wipe your mind, then you would have absolutely no sense of separation from the rest of the world. And you would literally be one with all of existence. I talk about these topics a lot more in depth in my video, What is Ego? And I talk about how when you're born and you're born into the world, as a baby, you have no sense of self yet, because your self has nothing to do with your body, and it has nothing to do with any type of physical separation between you and the rest of the world. What you exist as is literally the ability for you to look in the mirror and make a distinction between me and everything else that's not me. When you're able to do that, you're making that distinction, that separation. That is what you are. So this is extremely important. I'm actually talking about your deepest existential nature. You are literally a thought and a distinction that you have made between yourself and the rest of the world. Now, your mind is already going to be making a lot of objections, because you have to realize that you have a current worldview. You have a current way that you see the world. You think the world is objective and physical. You think that we live on a planet Earth. You have a whole story about your family and how you were born, how old you are, where you live, with your friends. You have all these memories, a whole life narrative. And this narrative, its job is to reinforce and maintain your sense of self. But in truth, your sense of self is ultimately a fiction, a narrative, just a story. Like if you were to read Harry Potter, you are no more real than Harry Potter is in the book. It's just an idea, a distinction. Now, I've beaten this horse to death because it is so important to understand why the deepest secrets of the universe remain hidden. Now, understand that the ego's number one job in life is to maintain its sense of self, to maintain its separation between it and the rest of the world. So if I came and I started to erase the boundaries between you and the rest of the world, what would actually happen is you would feel like you're dying, because your existence relies on what you think you are. Your existence relies on the boundary between you and everything that's not you. So when I come in, all hip, like I'm pretend, when I come in and I tell you that everything is one, then that's not going to fly with your ego. So the ego's number one priority is to maintain separation between itself and the rest of the world, or else you feel like you're dying. Now, the ego uses many sneaky tactics, many very, very unconscious and sneaky tactics to basically filter out all of these universal secrets that are available to you in this lifetime. If you wanted to, you could go and discover what reality is made of, or you can discover what you exist as, or if life is a dream or not. But the question is, do you really want to discover these things? Because the truth is that if you really discover it, then everything you know to be true is going to be seen as false, including you and your entire life story. Are you willing to accept the radical idea that perhaps you weren't even born, or the idea that death is a complete illusion? But if you're open-minded to accept these things, then I'm not trying to force onto you any type of belief system or ideology. Instead, I just want to talk about the mechanics of how the ego actually keeps itself ignorant. So one of the best tactics that the ego uses to keep itself ignorant is by constructing a collective society. So our entire culture, everything from the commercials you see to the school that you go to all the people you talk to on the street, it's almost like everyone has formed a collective, and all of us are in the game of remaining ignorant. So our entire society has unconsciously been structured so that all of your attention is always focused outwards. You're always distracted by something. You're always on your phone looking at Twitter, or you're always, even in our science. So our science is always focused on the external world, and we completely ignore the internal world. The reason for this is because if the ego self-reflects too much, if you sit alone with your thoughts and self-reflect, then what's going to happen is a lot of your stories are going to start to dissolve, and that's existentially threatening. And we don't want that to happen because it hurts and it's uncomfortable. So instead, what the ego does is creates an entire society, which is number one purpose is to keep all of your attention focused outwards. So literally everything from the sports you watch, the work, the job that you go to, the entertainment that you watch, what you learn in school, what you see on your phone, what your friends' hobbies are. Everything is always externally oriented. So in that way, the ego remains ignorant and keeps itself ignorant. So another way that the ego keeps itself ignorant is by assuming that these deep existential secrets, if they were so important and if they were so tangibly beneficial for my life, we assume that they would be popular and that everyone would be talking about them. People say, Adam, if what you're saying is true and so important, as important and fundamental as you claim it is, then why hasn't everyone been talking about it? Why haven't I heard on the news about how my whole life is a fiction? It seems to me, Adam, that everyone, what are the odds that only you know what you're talking about, and then my entire culture is deluded? How could that be the case? Why would 99% of people have absolutely no clue what you're talking about here in this video, but only you and this small little group of wise sages and masters that have been alive for thousands of years? Why are you the only person that's telling me about this stuff? Well, the reason why is that, again, these topics, these advanced teachings are existentially threatening. It requires emotional labor to even listen to them. So on the news, when you're watching the news, do you think it's in the news' best interest to talk about how your entire life is a dream? Do you think that the news is going to get good reception from its audience if they put that on the news? Do you think the news anchor is conscious enough to be willing to accept that for himself personally? Or would it be actually a lot easier for them to put something sensational about Donald Trump or something about terrorism in the Middle East? Because that's a lot easier, a lot less existentially threatening for the audience to listen to. And this is the case with all of your social media. This is the case with your teachers in school. This is the case with your friends. The reason why no one is talking about this stuff is because if you take what I'm saying seriously in this video, this could be the video. These ideas could be the ideas that lead to your destruction as a false self. Okay, so the next tactic that the ego uses to maintain ignorance, this is one of my favorites, is projecting onto the teacher. So projection is a psychological phenomenon that happens when someone projects their problems and their worldview onto someone else, especially a teacher. So, for example, when I'm talking about these things, you might project onto me and say, oh, this guy Adam, he's just trying to sell me some type of ideology or some type of belief system so that somehow he can manipulate me into paying him money, or that he can get me to subscribe to his dirty YouTube channel that's going to try and indoctrinate me with all of his culty sounding ideas. So that really has nothing to do with what I'm doing, but that is a projection of your mind, because in your mind you think that anyone who tells you something that goes against your current worldview, then that person must be some type of religious fanatic or some type of cult leader who's deluded and like who believes in wild conspiracy theories. Now, really, if you listen closely to what I'm saying, that's not the case. I'm not really trying to get you to believe in anything. I'm speaking about the mechanics of mind and how the ego keeps itself ignorant to exploring deep truths. In the past, we have a lot of examples of projection. Wise masters like Jesus Christ, for example, he was only teaching love. His teachings, he was talking about love. He was talking about how to enter into the kingdom of heaven. He said, when the kingdom of heaven comes, people won't say, oh, look over there, look, the kingdom of heaven. Because the kingdom of heaven is within. And Jesus was an enlightened master whose teachings closely parallel all of the enlightened masters from all of the past traditions. And his teachings were really just about love, and he was just trying to help the masses. But his teachings were existentially threatening, and they were so ahead of their time, and they went against the common worldview that Jesus was literally burned, not burned, but he was hung from a cross by the very people who he was trying to help. But Jesus was actually so wise that even when he was hanging from the cross, he famously said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And this is really key, because all of these tactics that the ego uses to keep itself ignorant, all of them are unconscious. So when you're projecting onto a teacher, when you're amassing a mob and coming to my house with pitchforks and torches because I'm telling you your entire life is a dream, or when you mentally crucify me by criticizing what I'm saying or discrediting me as some type of lunatic, all of that is happening under your awareness. You're not actually aware of what you're doing. It's automatic. So the next way that the ego remains ignorant is by assuming that the deepest questions of life have no answer. So when I start talking about what reality is, or what happens after death, you assume automatically that these questions can't be answered. It's like, Adam, we already know that these questions can't be answered. We don't know. Or maybe you might even say, oh, I don't know about these questions. This just seems like philosophy. This just seems like pointless, intangible philosophy that's not going to help me practically start a business or practically get more sex. So what's the point of even wasting our time chasing after these questions that we already know have no answer? So if you check out my video, How to Acquire Wisdom, that video dovetails really well with this video, then realize that by claiming that these questions have no answer, that's actually a form of knowing something. And in truth, you don't actually know whether these questions can be answered or not. And in this video, I'm claiming that they can. And it just requires lots of open-mindedness and the seeking out of teachers and the seeking out of wisdom. So don't assume that these questions have no answer. Next, we assume that these deep questions will eventually be answered by science and technology. And this is not the case, because the purpose of science is not to answer what happens after death, or the purpose of science is not to answer if life is a dream or not. The purpose of our modern science is to create tangible tools that help us practically in the real world. And a lot of our physics is very trapped in certain ways of thinking and certain paradigms, such as the materialist paradigm. I talk about a lot of this in my video, Is Life a Dream? I go into a lot more depth in that. It's a very deep topic that I can't get into in this video. But just realize that the answers to these deep questions have already been found by the yogis and the sages and the mystics. And that you don't have to wait 1,000 years for some scientist with a microscope, even though obviously if you're using a microscope, you're already looking in the wrong direction. You have to turn inwards, not outwards. You already know that, what was I saying? That science isn't going to get the answer. In fact, the answers have already been found. So we already talked about assuming that deep questions or deep answers would be popular. Now, this is a really big way that the ego corrupts and keeps itself ignorant, is that the ego corrupts the teachings that are being given to it. So when I tell you about how your life is a dream, or I tell you about how your existence is a fiction, what's going to happen is you're going to listen to me. Sure, you're going to listen to me, but then you're going to actually corrupt what I'm saying, and you're going to twist it, and you're going to dirty the teaching. And what's going to happen is, even if you are agreeing with me and you're actually accepting what I'm saying and you're interested, what's going to happen is you're going to take these ideas and you're going to take them in, and you're going to turn it into a belief system, and you're going to turn it into an ideology. And what that process of turning any belief into an ideology actually perpetuates the ego's existence. It perpetuates the separation that the ego has between itself and the world. Because the ego is really just a collection of many different belief systems. You're basically just a complex web of beliefs about how you think the world works. And what you're going to do is you're going to take what I'm saying here and you're going to just add it into your belief system. You're going to add it into your web of beliefs. And really, the process of discovering the deepest secrets of the universe has nothing to do with believing what someone else tells you, and it has everything to do with questioning your currently held beliefs. So blindly believing what I'm saying isn't going to help you. However, at least being open-minded to what I'm saying is a step in the right direction. But what is required is deep turning inwards and existential contemplation, looking within, asking yourself questions like, what is reality? What am I? How can I trust science? How do I know? How does knowledge work? Check out my video, How to Acquire Wisdom, for more practical techniques on how to do this. So I already talked about clinging to ideology. I'm going to release another video called, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but it's basically called That Thing Doesn't Make Logical Sense. And it's a response to people who use logic, because the ego likes to use logic to keep itself entrenched in its current worldview and to dismiss ideas that are outside of its worldview. And the key takeaway from that video is to realize that your logic, what currently makes sense to you, is relative to your current worldview, your current paradigm. So if I come and I start talking about past lives, or I start talking about chakras, then you're going to tell me that, Adam, past lives, that doesn't make any logical sense. That doesn't exist. It just doesn't make any logical sense. And yeah, for you, it doesn't make any logical sense. But for me, I can explain that whole phenomenon with perfect logic. But the difference between me and you is that my worldview, the way I see reality and existence, is completely, radically different. The actual foundations of what I think the world is even made of is completely different than the way that you think the world is, what you think the world is made of. So logically, to me, past lives makes perfect sense. However, I don't really know if it's real or not, and I don't really care if it's real or not. But for you to come and tell me that something doesn't make logical sense, and to use this as a type of argument, as if logic is an objective thing and there's only one type of logic, and that either something makes logical sense or it doesn't, that fails to understand that logic is completely relative to your current worldview. And I talk about this in a lot more depth in my video. I think I'm going to call it, That Thing Doesn't Make Logical Sense, Adam. And the last point, I've been talking for a while, but the last way that the ego keeps itself ignorant, and this is a really important one, is by staying in one state of consciousness for its entire life and not exploring alternative states of consciousness. So what is a state of consciousness? We have the waking state of consciousness, we have the dreaming state of consciousness, and we have the deep sleep state of consciousness. Now, most people only experience these three states in their entire life. Now, there are ways to experience alternative states of consciousness, and this is so important for stepping out of your current bubble that you live in. So for example, if you were to try psilocybin mushrooms, for example, then that would completely shift your consciousness in a very profound way, where you would start to see like, holy shit, all of society is asleep and all of society is deluded, and all they're trying to do is constantly turn their attention outwards so that they don't have to go inwards and self-reflect and do that emotional labor. You'll actually see that clearly if you do some mushrooms. Or maybe you'll be forced to self-reflect, and then you'll get really scared and you'll get really existentially threatened and you'll have a bad trip. And then you'll talk about how mushrooms are the worst thing ever. But exploring different states of consciousness, like ways to do this are meditation, contemplation, and psychedelics. Now, I'm not really talking about marijuana, and I'm not talking about cocaine, and I'm not talking about Percocets. This is bullshit. These are not consciousness altering substances that meaningfully alter your consciousness in a way that will actually benefit you. So if you change your state of awareness and you change your state of consciousness, that's going to open your mind a lot more, and it's going to help you realize that there are a lot of deep secrets that are not being talked about by the rest of the world. Now, before I end off, I want you to realize that this present moment here, this thing, what the hell is this? What if you just actually like look at your hands? This is a total miracle. This is a complete miracle. There is absolutely no rational reason why any of this should exist. You can come in with your stories about evolution and the Big Bang and science and all this stuff, but if you are really honest with yourself and you really care about understanding what the fuck is going on in this present moment, you'll notice that if you're really honest, this present moment makes no sense at all. Why are there things? Why is there a guy on the screen talking to you right now? And how can you understand every single word that's coming out of his mouth? Instantly, immediately. How is this reality so complex? Just really get in touch with what the fuck is going on right now? Because we live our whole lives in a rut, in a state of drudgery, where we're just trying to accomplish tasks like robots. You go to school, you do your homework, you come home, go online, hang out with your friends, but you forget. You're forgetting what the fuck is going on right now. What the hell is this thing? When you were a kid, when you were 2 years old, you were in touch with this. Remember when you were 2 years old or when you were like 4 years old and you were taking a bath and you were taking a shower and you just sit there and just stare at your hands and just be like, what the fuck is this hand? Like what? You look at your legs, like just like, how are there legs here? Like where did all of this come from? It's important to get yourself back in touch with that childlike curiosity and zest and love for life. And when you get back in touch with that, you're going to want to take this pursuit of wisdom a lot more seriously. And you're going to want to actually go and get the answer for what happens after you die. Obviously, the answer is not out there, it's within, but you need some external guidance to show you how to turn within properly. And that's the purpose of this channel right here. So that's a good way for me to end this video. If you like this video, give it a like. Subscribe to my channel for more mind-shattering videos like this. I talk a lot about meditation. I talk a lot about philosophy, but practical philosophy. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of resources and tips for how to acquire wisdom in your life and really for how to live a good life, how to live a deep life, how to live a meaningful life, and how to not waste your existence with some random menial drudgery, how to actually get the most juice out of your life. So subscribe for more videos like this. Comment what you liked, what you didn't like. Give me some responses, some arguments. I love hearing your responses in the comments because it helps me practice answering people's questions, and then that gives me more ideas for my new videos. Got a lot of new videos to come. I hope you like this one and stick with me because I got the rest of my life to keep making videos. They're going to only get deeper. They're going to only get easier to understand. And my speaking's going to improve everything. So stick with me. It's going to be an amazing journey. And I'll catch you in the next one.